Hello from Shanghai. We're talking with Dr. Andy Davids, who is the Global Director of Tall Buildings for Hyder Consulting. And among your many projects right now is the one that everybody in the world is talking about, the Broad Group's Sky City project and their description of building an 838-meter tower in 90 days, which everybody's wondering about that. And there's a pretty good range of reactions all over this spectrum on how doable that is, including from people here. And so, obviously, the question everyone wants to ask is, how serious is this?
Thank you, Jeff. It's a great question. Let me answer it by saying that we shouldn't get fixated on the supposed construction times of these things. Okay? I think what we need to focus on really is the project itself. And what we've discovered from some of the recent projects we've completed, Burj Khalifa, a great example. Fabulous building, tallest building in the world. It took 6 or 7 years to build, okay, which is stretching out to being near the limit of where our developers can tolerate, really. So I think what was identified really from that project and others is that we've got to come up with a way of building these tall buildings much quicker than what we are at the moment. Otherwise, you know, it's very difficult to imagine building a building taller than twice the height of Burj Khalifa, for example. People aren't going to wait 15 years for it to be open. They're simply not. So with that in mind, if we can come up with a construction system, a holistic construction system for a building of a similar height to Burj, even if we built it in half the time, I mean that's 3 years, you know, or a third of the time, 2 years, we're still on a winner. We're still on the winner. So rather than kind of directly answer your question about can we build it in 90 days, I mean, a more relevant question is if we can build a building at the same height as Burj, but in half the time, that's a really significant leap forward.
And you would see more tall buildings because it's certainly been the history that they're greatly dependent on the economic cycle. And we've seen booms and busts, and we've seen them certainly torpedo super tall projects.
Yeah, we have, and I think the history of tall buildings up till this point has been that each one of them, you know, they're like children, aren't they? Each one of them is beautiful, and each one is handcrafted. They're all kind of in a similar family, if you will. They're all the same sort of height or whatever. But if you look at the spectrum of 400-meter buildings, 500-meter buildings, each one of them is individually handcrafted. And maybe that observation is at the heart of why they take so long to build. Not a criticism at all, by any means, an observation. So I think with this J220 project that you referred to here in China, the owner, developer there has kind of turned that paradigm on its head, and he said, okay, instead of designing and building a building, let's design a product. Let's take that product and use the product to build something, a building. So I guess the analogy there is Lego bricks. So if we can come up with a really clever Lego brick that we can mass produce, and we can assemble it perhaps in different ways to create different shape buildings, but essentially we're producing Lego bricks. If we can then do that in a way that we can assemble them really quickly, I mean really quickly, then we're on a winner, because then we're able to build buildings that are a similar height to Burj, maybe twice the height of Burj, in substantially less time. And as I said before, if we can cut that time in half, if we can cut it down to, you know, an 800-meter building finished, all gassed up and ready to go in 2 or 3 years, that's a story in itself. So the way we're going about it is we're looking at the floor system, and the floor system itself is completely pre-engineered and pre-built in the factory. So it has the floor decking, the beams, it has all the MEP systems, the lights, the ceiling. It's got everything in there. So that's all kind of mass-produced, if you will, and the columns and supporting structure. It's all mass-produced, and it all comes out to site in a carefully orchestrated way. And the cranes just suck it up, and there you go. Some trial buildings have been done. There's a 30-story building, which I think is famously viewed on the internet as being put up in 2 weeks. stayed in that building, inspected it rigorously myself. It's a beautiful building actually. It's a hotel. It functions perfectly well as a hotel. It's a great building, and it was built in 2 weeks. Whether you can extrapolate that to build an 800-meter building in 6 months, not sure. But I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't matter. Let's say we build an 800-meter building in 2 years. That in itself is still a fabulous achievement, and I have absolute confidence that we can do that.
The connotations among some when you talk about going from handcrafted, individually done to not necessarily mass-produced, but working away from handcrafted, there are some negative connotations to that. But one thing that we've learned at this conference is that it's not as much mass production as it is mass customization, in that you can pretty well design it the way you want it to and then mass produce modules.
I think so, and I think what the owner and developer has looked at here is the market here that's in China and much of the rest of the world actually. If he's looked at his customers and said, what suits their needs, and he's done that really, really well. It's a great product. The owner keeps telling me that we shouldn't really look at it so much as a building. We should look at it as a really clever product, and it is a clever product. And it is completely focused on the consumer.
Speaking of which, does this potentially help with the problem of housing disparity? Because people say that probably those well off are more likely to end up in tall buildings than those who are not. Is this approach something that can provide housing to the lower segments of society who a lot of people don't think have a chance to live that way?
Jeff, that's a great question, and I had that conversation with the chairman himself, and actually that is the key driver to the whole project. The numbers in China are roughly as follows. On 1 square kilometre of land in China, they would typically house 50,000 people. And the way they would house 50,000 people is having 3-4-story construction, the usual kind of blocks of flats and so on, covering it. And they would cover maybe 50% of the area, a little more. And after that, you lay in the infrastructure and the roads. You've probably soaked up 70% of the area to house 50,000 people, which leaves you 30% of the area for recreation and, more importantly, for growing food. So actually, there is a serious concern that places like China will actually run out of land eventually. Eventually, the sustainability argument isn't a kind of a marginal argument; it's a life and death argument. So if you look at that and say, okay, and what they've done with this product, they've said, if we can house 50,000 people in 10% of the area, which is what we can do with 3 of these buildings, we can do exactly that. We've got 90% of the area left for open space, recreation, energy generation, food production, which is an incredible advance forward on where we are at the moment. So from a sustainability, as in the true meaning of the word, sustainable society, actually housing the population in these sorts of buildings is a definite winner. And it's the key driver to what we're doing.
To kind of wrap this up, you have a news headline of sorts this week, in that you're meeting tomorrow to get approval.
Right.
Tell me what that was again, please.
Right. We've been working very, very diligently, a big team working on developing the product, the building, going through a lot of wind tunnel testing, a lot of site investigation, tremendous cooperation from the approval authorities at all levels. There's a great interest in this project in China at all levels, and we're very, very fortunate to be able to meet the first of the expert review panels tomorrow afternoon, actually, straight after the conference, and we're hoping to get a good result there.
And who are the experts?
It's not something I know.
Okay.
We're very much looking forward to the meeting. We're well prepared for it. The building performs very, very well. It's actually this particular building's being built in Changsha, which is very close to Shanghai. It's not in a particularly high seismic zone, but we've, at the instruction of the chairman, we've deliberately gone and designed this building for an intensity 9 earthquake. And the reason we've done that is to really demonstrate the robustness of the system. It's a fabulously robust system. A lot of structural steel in there, moment, sway frames and so on, so they respond very, very well to strong earthquake motions. And so the idea is that we design the building, the system, to withstand the strongest possible earthquakes that are present here in China, and then we can actually implement these sorts of buildings in any province in China.
Well, bottom line is the expert review panel is the panel that will allow you to go forward
Indeed.
with the project.
And we really look forward to their comments, and I'm sure they'll be very helpful.
And at what point, how far away are we from actual construction, do you think? Range? Months. Very interesting. So a lot of developments to come out of Broad Group, and we thank you for coming and
thank you.
talking with us.
We're looking forward to giving you an update at the CTB, the next CTB conference, which I think is in the middle of next year. Hopefully we'll have a fair bit of a building poking up out of the ground at that point.
Terrific. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.